Hello, this is Gene. I've been seeing this thing on TikTok about do you ever think about the Roman Empire? And of course, my wife didn't see this. She didn't ask me this question, but I saw this how younger people are talking to their their spouse or their boyfriend, and they're all like, "Yeah, sometimes I do," and these women just don't understand uh, what's going on here. And Matt Walsh actually talked about this. Of course, I think his was very superficial. He's like that. Men think about stuff like this all the time. We think about fishing, or we think about, um, other things in history, and we think about what we're going to do, in the law yard over there, things that sometimes maybe women would not think about. So at the superficial level, he's right. But what I saw today, I saw a really, really good video on this, and I'll link it below. And it talks about how that we as men are drawn to something more important, and that we're missing something in our lives as men that we want to provide and protect and all that good stuff, and that we want something to aspire to, that we want to be something to be proud about. And when you think about Rome, you kind of think about uh, the institution of the Western culture. A lot of things came from them. You go a little bit further back from that, but in the West, they're kind of like that. The Greeks and them are very synonymous of things that they've done. They have things that are still standing now. Their aqueducts are still working. This is 2,250, 2,500 years old. And these are things you can look at and say this is a civilization to this. Now they fell, and unfortunately, some of the same issues they were having, we're having right now. There was an identity crisis back there as well. When I talk about identity, I'm talking about, uh, you know, sexual, racial, all that stuff was going on at the same time. This is 2,000 years ago. So when men are thinking, everybody thinks we just think about, sex, and we only think about with our dick and all that stuff, but we're the greatest philosophers of all time, the greatest authors of all time, as a sex, let's say. Um, we just are. And there are so many people that talk about this. I mean, I think about stuff in the Western culture all the time, and that has to relate back to the Roman Empire. Do I talk all the time about it? But clearly, one of my favorite movies of all time is Gladiator, and the hierarchy that's in that, and the guy that you not root for it, but you understand who was the good person in that. Um, but I also think of like the Third Reich, and that was. What was the idea about that? This grand vision that Hitler had, and it went off the deep end. But I think the idea was not a bad idea to what they wanted to do. It didn't really have anything to do with the Jewish people, so don't get all upset. This is not an anti-Semitic thing at all. But he wanted to group all the Germanic people together, and together they were going to build this 5,000 1,000 year uh, Reich civilization. And he started doing the stuff that he did there. The highways, the national health care, the first for dealing with pets, um, doing all the stuff, get rid of the degeneracy that was going on. People always wonder, you always hear about he burned all these books. All he really burned was all the transgender and all that bullshit that they were doing in Berlin. All these academics that happen to be from the same group of people, um, that he obviously had an issue with, but he didn't understand. He didn't like what was going on in the German people at that time. He was also dealing with the communists who wanted to take over as well. I mean, this was going on in the entire world at that time. So he had to deal with that, and they were trying to infiltrate Berlin and all that stuff, and they were pushing all this Marxism or whatever you want to call it back then, but pushing this shit, including this transgenders and all that stuff, in Berlin, and he obviously didn't like that. So he dealt with that, got rid of it pretty quick, um, changed the economic um, outlook in the country. They were working to something. They rebuilt the country. And then he did what he did. And now, what he did at first, I had no issue with. He said, "I'm going to take back what you took from us, and I'm going to get all the people that are Germanic that want to come back, that are going to come back." And then he also gave certain people chances to leave. He didn't, he said, "This is what we want." Now, you could say he was, I can't really call it white supremacy, but you can call it Germanic supremacy. He wanted everybody to be related. Now, in his mind, he thought pretty much everybody in Europe were kind of that way. There are a lot of Germanic people in northern Europe. The Scandinavians are clearly related to the Germanic people. On the French, all the way to the sea, all the way up to north of that is pretty much all Germanic people. Now, yes, we had the Romans that went up in the went up to the UK. You had other Celts. I mean, they're all related, right? So, and he always looked at as England as kind of his brothers. He did. He felt this way. You could talk about the man as a politician and what he did for the German people and Germany himself, and you could talk about the man, the war criminal, all that stuff as well. It's not black and white with him, and it's none of those leaders back then are basically the same. I mean, what's his name from England? I'm gonna forget his name. And he's lionized in England, but he killed more people than Hitler did. He authorized nighttime bombing and civilian targets in Germany before Hitler did anything. He kept saying, "Stop it, stop it, stop it," and then eventually he said, "Fuck it, go in there," and they started bombing London. People, if you look in the actual history books, they'll say that he started all this, that Hitler started this bombing at night in London, but that's not. This was response to what the Britain was doing. Anyway, all I'm saying, I think about stuff like that all the time. I think about what would have happened if Germany would have won the war. I don't think they could have done anything more. I mean, they were still landlocked, kind of. I think that we were at that point where having an actual full empire would have never actually worked. I don't think they would have done anything to us. We probably would have been allies with them at the end of the war. I mean, a lot of people in our country was a 50-50 split, really. There were a lot of German people here. People don't understand that. There's a reason why we waited a while before we got in, and people, there's some conspiracy thing about this, thinking, hey, we wanted them to hit Pearl Harbor so we get involved in the war. We allowed it to happen, basically. And it kind of helped us, even though we're kind of getting out of the Depression. It kind of helped us ramping up for the war. A lot more people working, doing stuff, helping everybody else out. And then eventually, after the war, we became eventually the top superpower in the world, and now we're losing that. So it makes absolute perfect sense why young men, hopefully, are looking at this and saying what they feel, and that calling that they have, that there's something more. And I've always believed this. I think that there's something that is handed down, either through the blood or the persona, but I'll say the blood from your generations that go way, 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 way back. That there's something there that you can feel it, and I felt it when I was in Europe. I felt it when I was in Paris, like I'd been there before. I felt it was familiar to me. There's a reason why I like hills. There's a reason why I like certain things that are, I'm not going to say they're basically white, but it's just what it is, And I think that that's from whether you believe evolution, we've been here for millions and millions of years, and I'm like a very close relative to a monkey, or you believe in this all started like 10,000 years ago, um, depending on whether it was an ass or something happening that killed a lot of people off and we could start over again. I don't know. Obviously, there was a flood. We think that that's pretty proven now. There's something that happened that was cataclysmic. Could have been the end of the ice age, and that caused all the water. Whatever. There's a lot of different ideas here, but it clearly happened. I mean, we see the evidence everywhere you go. Clearly happened in the Middle East. So that something happened there. So guys, we think about stuff like this all the time. I'm not saying that women don't, but we're a totally different animal. So it could have been the Roman Empire. It could be um, the Huns in China, or the Mongolians, or it could be the Old West. Men like hierarchy. They like to go in a room and find out where they actually are. Some people will strive to be above that. They'll say, I'm going to compete against these other men to be above him. We want the competitiveness, the competitiveness. We want that, and the problem is it's being pulled out of us because we're called, toxic masculinity, and it's a word that's not even real. All this is all leftist jargon that they just pull out. They're talking about this whole study happened in prison, because when men were in there and they're violent criminals, they'll end up killing each other, and that is the definition of toxic. I can't say, but they've incorporated that to normal men. That if you do something, that's just toxic, and it's like everything now. Well, that whole relationship was toxic, and everything's toxic. Well, toxic usually means that you might die from it, but anyway. Or if you don't look exactly right, if you were like Bradley Cooper, and I ended up talking to a woman in a gym, you'd be fine with it. But if it was like me and I walk into talking to a woman, I'm a creeper, I'm a rapist. It is what it is, and there are way too many guys that won't say anything. They just sit in the background, and then it gets in their head, and they think they have no way they can get going forth. And some of them very smooth, few, but some of them become very incel, and some of them do stupid shit because they can't believe that they're not with a woman, and they blame all women. And then you got the MGTOW, which is a little bigger thing than that. And I get it. I do what they're saying, but it's really bad for the actual culture. Just as Marxism is, and social feminism and all this stuff. We just can't go through life thinking that that the society is going to change on its own. So another video, I talked to Matt Walsh about this whole thing, so I'll refer to that. But it's just something that we're longing for, and we don't have it anymore. So guys are looking for it, and they want something. They want something to drive them. And when men don't have it, we do stupid shit we shouldn't do. And I talked about that with Deion Sanders. He's all great right now, but every year he's going to come in and continually replace his team. And these guys are going to be out of the limelight, and they don't have a degree and all that stuff. And they're going to be back on, regardless of they're white or not, or black or white, it doesn't matter. They're going to be on that corner. And then what's going to happen then? Is Deion going to be available for the mentoring that they're going to need at that time? There's just so much here. The society is failing because men are failing. And they, in the back of their mind at this point right now, they think it's better that they don't be around women, that they don't need to reproduce. They're just going to do whatever they're going to do. They're just going to go get sex whenever they want to get it, and they're just not going to deal with it anymore. It's not at the crisis level, but it's getting there. Everything that I thought was not going to happen, I thought it would take 20 years, it's already happening now. So the idea that if we don't do something about this, that men are going to continually do this. It's why we think about so many things, and why we really need the structure in our lives, and we should talk about the Roman Empire. It's something that was incredible. but it was there for a while before it actually fell down. And then we look at it, what we've done here, and we're just, we see it falling down. And then, and by extension, they're talking about, by extension, men are failing as well. So it concerns all of us. So when guys actually sit down and have this conversation with themselves or other guys, they know what's coming. They can be in denial about it, but they know that there's something coming. And media might say that or whatever. Just talk to somebody who's in 20s and just listen to what they have to say. And they know what's coming. They think that there's no future for them. So it's very, very tough right now. All right, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to try to link that other video down below. Guy was much more concise than I would be. He comes from a biblical viewpoint, which I think is important too. Got to remember, most of the stuff that we have is because of what the Bible did. Gave us standards, gave us, I say standards. And then Western culture was basically built off of that. Now, people would say that means that the Western culture is Jewish. I don't go that way. There are two different type of books there. But anyway, I'll stop right there. You guys have a good day, and let's talk about the comments.